welcome to the settlement. I'm Fen, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the two latest releases for the simulator. This is Legendary Character Glow and Lantern Aya. I intended to get to these a little bit earlier, but just time hasn't been particularly kind with a lot of things going on. I lost a number of days that otherwise would have been scheduled for recording, so I'm going to handle that, get it done today, and hopefully get back to a more regular recording schedule. We'll see. Speaking of, next video will be on the Crimson Crockery. After that, I'm going to be working on the Smog Singer's Dark Bestiary and Colosseum videos. There may be a smaller one in between, and as I wrote on the Patreon, I'm also trying to work out how I want to cover all the philosophies in video form. Not sure on that yet. Figure out the format and everything. In other news, those of you who followed playing board games, I've been playing with Justin a playthrough of People of Lantern. It was ridiculously harsh with some honestly really unlikely events that were just incredibly punishing, but it was a lot of fun. We have been recording a new video series, but Justin's had to put his channel on hiatus for a while, so if you're wondering where those are, they'll come out once Justin's back and recording and everything. So if you haven't, he put up a video talking about his hiatus, and it, I'd encourage you to give him all the best thoughts, and because he's a really big delight, and like just really positive part of board gaming. He's made Arkham so much more accessible for me, and he's immensely fun to play with, even when Kingdom Death is just going, well, guess what? I like the one. Roll that several times. Anyway, that's that. We're going to get onto the review now. I'm going to cover Lantern Aya first, and then go on to Glow. Both of these sort of represent versions of the traditional white box releases. Lantern Aya is a single miniature with a small amount of game content. Glow is 4 miniatures with slightly more game content. I'm going to be upfront and honest. Lantern Aya is one of the worst white boxes I've ever opened. I almost really didn't want to buy this a second time for the simulator, even though it's like $3.49 plus tax, because the honest truth is I don't ever play with it. So we're going to look at why I say that. I'm going to devil's advocate it and talk about the ways you can try and use this more positively, but it's just, I don't think it's a particularly great design. Glow, on the other hand, well, we'll get to that. So let's start with Lantern Aya, and let's see what you get. Okay, here we have them. This is everything comes in the box. I think I called it Lantern Aya just before opening, but this is Lunar Aya. The second one, I think, of the Lunar series. The previous one, which hasn't been released on simulator, is the Lunar Night. That's a really, really good box, that one. This one, well, let's get into it. So, first of all, we've got Aya herself holding the gear card, along with some of her, drop frames, her more traditional weapons here, and we've got some. Well, it's a really nice base. In fact, this is a gorgeous model. It's one of my absolute favourites. Part of that is it's got Aya's wearing a Cheongsam, to use the English loan word, or a Kipao. Again, English loan word for this type of dress. It is characterful, it is fun, it's pretty, and as somebody who I used to perform the lion dance when I lived in the UK, lion for the Chinese New Year. I really like seeing this kind of stuff. It's just a gorgeous model. So, really not got anything at all negative to say about that. In fact, I go as far as to say I would really quite like to see a settlement that leans into this aesthetic. People of the Sun has a very Japanese aesthetic. I'd love her to be something else with a more Chinese influence to it as well, as part of exploring the world. It's always fun to see that kind of stuff. Right, so then we got, this is what you get in here. You get a seed pattern QR code, goes through rules. Let's get into how seed patterns work very briefly, and then we'll talk specifically about the Vivid Band Pale. Seed patterns have been around for a while, but they were really formalised in the Gambler's Chest with a full set of rules. Now, if you don't have the Gambler's Chest, then this will go into a deck with all of the other seed patterns you might happen to own, and then you'll draw one each time a survivor reaches 3 understanding. The drafting table here formalises that further. Once one survivor reaches 3 understanding, it will trigger a story event that is either called Dandelions and Designs, or Designs and Dandelions. I can never remember the order. But anyway, that is where the ideas are seeded into the mind of a survivor and they make the drafting table. You still have this 3 understanding in a seed pattern card, but you also have the ability to generate more. This becomes a good place to sync endeavours when you're further into the campaign and you've made sure you've got enough population that you don't really need to aggressively push that every lantern year. Even just +1 understanding, that's quite nice to have. But yeah, generally most campaigns, once you get to the mid game, you should draw all the seed patterns you need. Now, what is a seed pattern? Here we've got a seed pattern. This card here, it's got a orange back. Some of the older physical ones unfortunately have a black back, and because there's no sleeves that fit American bridge sized cards with opaque backs, that can be quite an issue. You kind of have a marked deck, but for people who are coming into the simulator or have picked up their cards later on, that shouldn't be an issue. Essentially, when this is drawn from the deck, you have an extra crafting recipe. This up here indicates the era it needs to use resources from this sort of level monster, how many maximum you can craft, the number for reference. Negatives are promo gear, so you can choose to exclude them if you want a more more authentic and thematic experience. Things like this are a bit more sort of reaching into the wider multiverse of Kingdom Death. There's Kingdom Death, but there's also the generic hero series, and there's Kingdom Death High, and Kingdom Death itself plays with the fourth wall of being a board game. This is sort of optional. Below we have the crafting recipe, but we also have extra requirements. In this case, we have to have heat, like via the lantern oven, and we need paint innovated. And then once you've got all that, and you pay it, follow the rules, you can craft it. Now, one of the things I will say that's nice about this pattern is it doesn't require you to have documented something that a survivor did years past in order to qualify for crafting. That happens occasionally on seed patterns, where it might be like a survivor who dealt the killing blow to the Gorm does something, and you're like, which survivors dealt a killing blow to the Gorm, and what kind of things do I need to track like that? Luckily, this doesn't have any of that. But it does require you to have the Phoenix in the campaign, which is what this is about. If you don't have the Phoenix as a quarry monster, you don't put this card in the deck at the start, so you'll never see it. As always, have mixed opinions on the Phoenix. It's my least favourite of all the Nose 3 monsters, so that's a small mark against this. Part of the reason I don't play with it as much is just because I choose not to play with the Phoenix if I have the option. The gear card itself, the Vivid Bien Pal, is a seed, item, flammable, noisy. Being an item is great. Items are the best kind of gear cards because they basically never become obsolete. Weapons, the strength can fall behind where you need it to be. Armor, it can end up producing not enough armor points, but items just flat scaling across the entire campaign. You know, bandages is as good in Lantern Year 1 as it is in Lantern Year 30, so generally being an item's good. The ability here though is, at the start of your act, put a token on this and the adjacent monster gains a flinch token. Then, if it has 5+ tokens, you archive this and suffer the death and dismembered arm severe injuries. So, noisy is always a negative keyword due to the 1% chance of deleting the survivor on the hunt per basic hunt event. Then on top of this here, when we get to 5 tokens or higher, this archives itself and it archives your survivor's hearing and dismembered arm, and it has no affinities whatsoever. So the only thing it's really doing is providing flinch tokens. Flinch tokens are good. A flinch token is when a monster with a flinch token attempts to perform a reaction, you cancel that reaction and discard this card. A monster cannot have more than 1 flinch token. So essentially you stick this survivor adjacent to the monster, and at the start of their act they will put a flinch token onto the monster, and you get to ignore the first reaction that would be performed during any survivor's turn. That is quite strong. There are other things that give up flinch tokens, that's fantastic. And the fact that it gives a flinch token without requiring any rolls is strong. The trouble is, you're on a clock. You have no affinities on this gear card. I would have liked to have at least seen some red affinities. That would have been quite thematic for what this weapon, this item is doing. But it doesn't have those, so that reduces its value. And it takes up a slot in your gear grid. We've got a finite number of slots. We usually lose 5 of them to armor, so we've only really got 4 others to play with. And even if you had the available room, you're essentially almost retiring a survivor when you do this, if you get to the 5+ tokens. So it isn't great. But let's just devil's advocate this for a moment. First of all, you could have a silk surgery to replace the dismembered arm and maybe even help with the death. You could also just try and win the showdown in 4 turns, so the survivor never acts the 5th time, and thereby the Bian Pao doesn't get to the trigger. Or you have other ways of removing tokens perhaps. So there are spaces where you could possibly use this. You could also just accept that it's going to ruin a survivor every showdown and go out with 3 survivors that matter and 1 who is just a disposable red shirt, or, you know, red Chong Sam. It's not great, because these days throwing away 1 survivor as a disposable one isn't ideal. It could be okay if you're facing Spediculus, because a survivor will get abducted by the Taken Revenge in that case, so that's a place where maybe you could use it on the disposable red shirt. But ultimately, unless you're winning the showdown in 3 to 4 turns, which is possible, this is not great. And on top of it causing all that damage to the survivor, it's archiving itself, so you need to make it again, and this does have a perfect hide in the crafting cost. There's so many better things you could be doing with a perfect hide, so it's incredibly hard to justify this seed pattern at all. And ultimately that's why I don't recommend it. Why I actually, if I wasn't buying this for the sake of reviewing it, I wouldn't buy it on the simulator at all. Physically, I bought it for the purposes of reviewing, and as much as I do like this model, again, if I wasn't getting it for the purpose of reviewing, I just wouldn't pick it up at all, and I don't like saying that. I prefer these days to try and find at least some positives, which is why I tried to devil's advocate for it a bit, but ultimately this just isn't worth a slot in your gear grid. But if you do choose to try and take that risk, it could be quite exhilarating, and make sure the survivor has a one-handed weapon. So that is Lantern Aya. My first, just blanket not recommend. I think it needs to go back to drawing board and have some work done to it and get a updated version, because it's not great. It's not even. It doesn't even feel Phoenix related. Beyond the links to Phoenixes in Chinese culture. So yeah, big pass on that. We'll get to the other one now. Okay, so now it's time for Glow. Just a brief note before we get into this. You can see my mouse pointer has changed colour in game. That's because while trying to put away the Lunar Aya cards, I right-clicked on the seed pattern card and didn't have an option to archive it, and the menu broke and it wouldn't let me interact with anything, so I had to reset the room, and now we can do Glow. These things happen. Hopefully it's just a bug that happened to me and it was solvable, but I want to explain the change, and if I sound a bit exasperated, it would just be because of that, because the simulator has been making my life easy recently. Okay, so legendary character Glow. These legendary character boxes are kind of a new concept. They're adjacent to the Echoes of Death and Survivors of Death series in that they give you 4 models and some game content, but the difference is, instead of having 4 different characters, this is one character across 4 periods of their life. So let's open it up and take a look at what we get. Okay, so here's everything laid out, plus this character card from the Gambler's Chest. This one isn't included in the box. This is a really nice set. Not only do we get 4 gorgeous models, each one representing Glow at various stages in her life. Here she is as an unarmoured survivor. Here she is wearing screaming armour, rawhide armour, and then Death King armour, which is pretty cool. There's an extra little neat thing with this we'll come back to. We also get these tokens. Now, these tokens to me are incredibly useful. When I'm playing Kingdom Death, keeping a track of everything I'm doing and even what survivors have done what can be a problem. My dog does not respect waiting for an end of a turn. If she wants something, she wants something. It's really helpful when solo playing to just have these. And this is currently the best set, because the other sets do have all of these 6 here, but this is the only one that comes with Fist Pump, which is specific to people of the Dreamkeeper from the Gambler's Chest as a separate action. It doesn't have People of the Sun specific actions, but at least it has one more than the usual 6 that you get with all the others. This is also, if I remember correctly, the first time these tokens have made it onto the simulator. They are just incredibly useful playing. Even playing with other people, it's really helpful, because somebody can glance over and look and visually see what survival actions others may have available, and it's a nice reminder to you as to what actions you could do, because let's face it, everyone forgets occasionally that you could dash to not suffer the effects of some potentially dangerous reaction or AI card, but maybe these will help you remember. They're also just beautifully illustrated, and I think this on the backs is a really good way of demonstrating that they've been used. Pulling them down to grayscale is thematic, and it just looks good. Fantastic. Got so much time for these tokens. I want more tokens in Kingdom Death that are specialized. I want flinch tokens. I want any kind of token that's specifically survival tokens, reroll. We got reroll tokens, but yeah, survival tokens, things like that. I think reminders are really helpful, and that's great. Then we have Glow herself. So, to briefly read it out, Glow is based on the Holy Mage from the generic line. The generic hero line is sort of an alternate universe with a bit more traditional stereotypes and in the case of Glow, she's been influenced by the Holy Mage. I'll just read the lore for that because it does build into why she's designed the way she is. The church parlours of the Order are found almost everywhere, but its Holy Mages are an enigma. For exorbitant fees of gold and jewels, the Holy Mage will transform adventurers inside and out. Masters of alteration, metamorphosis and transmogrification, the Holy Mage can transform muscle and mind alike. Their knowledge is a closely guarded secret, and to protect it, Holy Mages change their own appearance daily, leaving their number and identity a mystery. So, pretty fun concept of a mage around transforming, changing body shapes, and that's why we have this voluptuous bodysuit. It's kind of an echo of that. And then the Mage's Hood, Holy Mage, and then Holy Sword Whip, there's the holy part of it all. How this works is you have this glamorous legendary ability card. So this uses the character deck. If you don't have the character deck, we've got rules here where you, the first time a character is born, or next time a character is born in your settlement, they get the glamorous card. If you're playing with the actual rules from the Gambler's Chest, you will have this innovation, and at the start of the campaign you will set up the deck in order to, according to its rules. There will just be one legendary card in the deck, so if you have this, the Glamorous, then you can't have Weapon Master, or I can't remember what the name of the other one is because I don't use it very often. But yeah, you can only have one of this in what will be a 25 card deck. This one's really unusual in that it doesn't give the character indirect abilities, instead you're gaining patterns at certain milestones. At milestone 1, that's 200 XP, you'll get the voluptuous bodysuit, and then at 2 you'll get the Mage's Hood, and then at 3 you'll get the Holy Sword Whip. Once you've done all that, this card is effectively blank, so that's the price you're paying for it, is once you've unlocked all these things, your glamorous legendary characters, they're glamorous and that's all they're getting for it. Characters are an amazingly fun system. They do add more complexity to the game, but they help you focus characters in specific directions. This is not the best legendary ability. I rank both Weapon Master and the Red Survivor above the others. The Red Survivor is easily my favourite and the most fun, which is one thing that's a little shame, is because it's a legendary ability card, it is competing in that same space, and there's two other options that are both really good. But what you get is you unlock these patterns. If you're not familiar with patterns, they are basically miniature crafting locations that just have one thing on them. In this case, you can see here, you need face painting, and you need to spend 2 endeavours and 2 scrap, and you make the voluptuous bodysuit. You're limited to 1, which is the number in the corner, same with all of these. I appreciate that. It's nice to have this limit so you don't feel obligated to make more if it turns out to be really good, and it keeps them feeling unique without being unique. The voluptuous bodysuit is 1 to all hit locations, so that's like a leather shield, slightly worse. When you attack, you treat each 2 as if it's 1. That is amazing. That is a doubling of the automatic fails. So baseline now, 20% of the time the monster misses you, which is really good. And it's got a nice affinity here. Even you can see how they all connect together, but this is a good affinity anyway. Right facing greens I value a lot. Once we reach our second, we'll have the Mage's Hood. Costs 1 endeavour, 2 cloth, 1 scrap, 1 perfect hide. So this is where I was talking about previously, perfect hide on the Lunar Aya. There's better places to spend it, just about anywhere is better. This is a way better use of it. There's another interesting resource limitation here, which is the cloth. We have a very finite amount of cloth. That is specifically the 4 loincloths that you start the campaign with on the very first survivors in the prologue. Potentially you could have 6 if you were playing with 6 survivors, but that's about the maximum you have, and this is a lot to invest into one item, but I mean it's a good one. So the Mage's Hood is a head accessory. That means you can have it on your head in addition to armor. It provides 1 armor point. The ability here, green puzzle and red, is the first time you're attacked each round, you glow with confidence. Add 1 armor point to all hit location. Add 1 armor point to all hit locations for each attack roll that is a 1. So, if we combine that with a voluptuous bodysuit, that means a 1 or a 2 is going to be a miss on the first attack against you each round. So, that can generate a lot of armor points extra. Pretty strong. Very justifiable considering you've got to work a while to get this, and there's one specific survivor who's going to have to live long enough to reach that second milestone. And then our third, triggering on the third age milestone, Holy Sword Whip. This costs 1 endeavour, 1 ring whip and 3 scrap dagger. That's actually quite expensive, but it's fun. I do really like the storytelling that all of these cards, pack-in cards, sort of give just within their crafting costs. It requires Inner Lantern, which everyone will have pretty much by then, except for settlements that don't get Inner Lantern. So watch out for like People of the Sun. If I remember correctly, they don't get Inner Lantern, so this has less value there. And it is this weapon, the Holy Sword Whip. It's a 1 speed, 6 plus accuracy, 9 strength weapon with melee and sword and whip and metal and holy. Whip and sword, solid keywords. In fact, whip is a very good weapon class. It just rarely has good whips. It has reach 2, which is just great, and savage, which savage is better when you have it in combination with deadly, but still you can't complain about critical wounds equaling 2 wounds. That's nice to have. And then its ability, puzzle red, green, blue. When you're attacked, you choose a roll result and roll 1d10. If your roll is higher than the chosen result, set the chosen result to 1. So if you get attacked and they hit, say it hits on a 3, Crimson Crocodile hits you on a 3, you can then take that dice and roll, and if you roll a 4+, then you count it as a 1, which will allow you to trigger the Mage's Hood and gain more armor points. Really neat package, very interesting, very strong, reasonably balanced in that we're basically spending 3 of our 4 spare slots, if we're considering armor to take up 4 of them, in order to get this package together. And we do need to generate an extra blue and an extra green affinity from all those other cards. And we don't get sharp unless we're using Cycloid Scale armor. But we can stack monster movement abilities, so like Phoenix armor, Dragon armor, Crimson Crocodile armor, Screaming Antelope armor. They can all combine very well because reach weapons are very good with monster movement, move and attack abilities, because they increase the number of spaces you can threaten with your weapon. So that's good. All of this is great. As I said, People of the Sun, not quite as good. But this is an option. You're choosing to put this in the campaign. Even if it is kind of just giving you a preset build, one survivor is pretty much going to end up rocking all of this for the whole campaign. That can be helpful. It does make the campaign a bit easier if you know one person's going to be on a sword whip once you get to the mid and late game. So yeah. Finally, the last thing is, sometimes I forget to demonstrate these, but Glow has a preferred weapon in her 3rd slot. She has this whip, and they updated it so it changes, which is really cool. So here she is with a oxidized ring whip, or ring whip. She also has the silk whip. Glad this isn't in physical. That's the kind of thing I'd knock off. The rawhide whip, which really does look to me like they've just moved the actual. This is on the sprue, this coiled whip, and they've added it there, which is really nice. The grapple claw, which I didn't think would be on there, but it is, and I'm really happy about that. I love the grapple claw, big fan of it. Hunter whip, of course. They don't have the fingernail whip. I think that's fine. The fingernail whip has, it doesn't have a physical sculpt, so they'd have had to render it for that, which I don't expect them to do that. And also, just to demonstrate these, in addition, all work with this version as well, and it's using the same sculpts. That's a starter basic. Like, interesting that there's actually... I always think of this as being a rawhide whip. Maybe it's a hunter's whip. But it seems to have, yeah, its own thing. So that's really cool. And just to briefly demonstrate it, oops, excuse me, it doesn't work with the early mage here, because you know, she's got her, just click on her, she's got a nothing in her hands. Is that a bug? Yes, that's a bug. She's supposed to have a bone dagger in that hand. I assume that's going to get fixed, and there should be a lantern here. I'm not sure why they're missing, and I didn't notice that beforehand, but I'm pretty sure that'll get fixed. Well, it will get fixed. So yeah, that's it. That's Glow. I really like this one. It's such a fun concept. It's $7.70 for the digital version on the shop. I don't know how much the physical version is because it's not currently on the shop as an available item, but I would speculate. I'd speculate that it's going to be 10 times that amount. That's the usual ratio, so $77 plus taxes and shipping, which is how much Survivors of Death 2 is, so that seems about right. And the 15th anniversary Survivors. It's great. There's like no contest. If you think you're going to play with this, you should just get it. And honestly, on the simulator, I think you should get it regardless, because having these tokens is so incredibly helpful and useful, especially when you can have them matched to a particular survivor, which adds an extra level of just visual information that you can internalize very quickly. Yeah, so this is like just such a great release, and I can't recommend it enough. So that's it. Thumbs down for Lunar Aya, sadly. Thumbs up for the character, but you know. And a huge thumbs up, in fact 2 thumbs up to this Glow. I think it's fantastic, and I really recommend it. And that's it. With thanks to my patrons who support these videos, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.